Hey, spiritual extremists, I'm here at the temple at Halcyon, where for over 75 years, every day at noon, they've had a service. Now, the service is dedicated to basic principles that they find universal in all religious traditions. Such things as creeds disappear and hearts remain. Such things as judge not, lest you be judged. Certain universal laws such as karma, the idea that things will come back to you in the spirit in which they were given. Good things beget good things, bad things beget bad things. The things like the golden rule, love thy neighbor as thyself. These are the sort of universal wisdom that brought people together. And the hope of Blavatsky and Olcott, and later Judge, and Francia Ledoux and Dr. Dower, was to try to put these universal wisdom together. And at the heart of this project was an idea that the mystical experience, the pinnacle experience of religious people, are all the same. And this is our link to this part of the lesson. Because now, after looking at the 5 stages of Evelyn Underhill, after looking at the 4 qualities of the mystical experience with William James, we're now turning to the academic approach. And we're going to look at 4 different sort of general schools of understanding comparative mysticism. The first argues with theosophy that the mystical experience is the same across traditions. So it argues that when you want to understand what brings religions together, it's the mystical experience. That is, even if you start in China or India or the Arabian Peninsula or America, every person, when they have that heightened spiritual experience, has the same experience. And it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Jew, Muslim, Taoist. You put mystics in a room, they may not speak a lot to each other, but they'll give each other a knowing nod. And this argument has been made by many different religious scholars who have tried to say that, yes, religions are different, but they culminate in the same idea. Let's listen to William Stace here. So the central characteristic in which all fully developed mystical experiences agree, which in the last analysis is definitive of them and serves to mark them off from other kinds of experiences, is that they invoke the apprehension of an ultimate non-sensuous unity in all things, a oneness, or a one, to which neither the senses nor reason can penetrate. In other words, it entirely transcends our sensory intellect consciousness. Not only in Christianity and Hinduism, but elsewhere, we find the essence of this experience is that an undifferentiated unity, though each culture and each religion interprets this undifferentiated unity in terms of its own creeds and dogmas. That is, they're experiencing the same thing again and again. This is the experience of the mystic, no matter what culture it is. And so this claim is important because if this is true, then mystics could be the thing that could unify the world. It could be the source. Listen to Aldous Huxley here. To speak more generally, mysticism has its fount in what is the raw material of all religion. It is also the inspiration of much philosophy, poetry, art, and music, a consciousness of a beyond, of something which, though it is interwoven with it, is not the external world of the material phenomenon, of an unseen over and above the seen. In the developed mystic, this consciousness is present in intense and highly specialized form. Not only have the mystics been found in all ages, in all parts of the world, in all religious systems, but all mysticism has manifested itself in similar or identical forms wherever the mystical consciousness is present. And so the idea here is that there is some meta experience that the mystics have that they agree with one another. We see this in a number of different thinkers. And here, let me quote Helena Blavatsky, the one who inspired the movement that culminated here in Halcyon. It says, universal brotherhood is not merely a noble and lofty ideal, it is actually an eternal fact in nature due to the oneness and divineness of all life. It is already the case that we are one in terms of our source and origin, our inner spiritual essence, and our ultimate destiny. but this needs to be recognized, accepted, and acted upon. Those who are acquainted with any way with the theosophy and theosophical movements are aware that it places constant emphasis on the unity of all religions. Now, this claim that the mystical experience is the unifying experience is something that many different traditions have wanted to be the case. And yet, when you look at religious people, man, it can be somewhat different. Get theologians in the room, man, they'll argue till they're blue in the face. Get philosophers in the room, holy cow. But get mystics in the room, they'll agree with each other. Let's listen to a contemporary mystic named Ken Wilber, who talks about the contemplative tradition, but the idea is the mystical experience. The contemplative traditions are based on a series of experiments in awareness. What if you pursue this witness to its source? What if you inquire within, pushing deeper and deeper into the source of awareness itself? What do you find as a repeatable, reproducible experiment in awareness? One of the most famous answers to that question begins, there is a subtle essence that pervades all reality. It is the reality of all that is, and the foundation of all that is. That essence is all. The essence is the real, and thou art that. In other words, observing the self eventually discloses its source, which is the spirit itself, emptiness itself. And the stages of transpersonal growth and development are basically the stages of following this observing self to its ultimate edge. And so mystics from all over the world converge in the belief that the experience they're having is an identical experience. That is the first position that some religious people and academics hold. That why many religions are different, mystics in each religious tradition are the same. As evidence for that, they'll point to very similar statements by mystics in the different traditions. Thou art that. I went from God to God, and they cried unto me, O thou I. Zen Buddhist, the inner light is beyond praise and blame, like space, it knows no boundaries, yet is even here within us, ever retaining its serenity and fullness. It is only when you hunt for it that you lose it. You cannot take hold of it equally, you cannot get rid of it. In the reality unitively known by the mystic, we speak no more of a creature, but only of one being, that there was one before creation, and that there is this is our super essence. Now, the criticism of this position has always been, okay, look, I know you want there to be unity in traditions, but in reality, if it's truly a mystical experience, and how can you say that if it's truly a mystical experience, which is ineffable and indescribable, how can you take those descriptions as evidence that they are the same? And just because they might even have similar phrases, I unite with the divine, usually within these traditions, when you auger down in them, you find that their definition of I is different, their definition of unite is different, and certainly their definition of God or Tao or Brahman is very different. So there may be external, superficial similarities in the mystic descriptions, but those are very different. So the critique has been, yes, the unity of the mystical experiences is really more aspirational for those who want there to be a common experience than reflective of the experience itself. And so some people have taken a sort of secondary approach, and this would be theory 2. The mystical experience is the same, but the interpretations of it vary according to religious and philosophical frameworks. And so what's it trying to argue here? That the mystical experience itself, that the pure experience is one and the same, but the minute we start talking about it, we inevitably fall into systems of language and description that are grounded in religions that are very different from each other. So that mystical experience, that pure experience that is the basis of mysticism is identical, but they're actually quite different. And the paths leading up to them are different. And so one version of this is to look at something like this. I want to use my little PowerPoint skills for you. That we all start at the bottom of the mountain. And we all have different paths up. This guy, pretty straight up. This guy, a little more jaggedy. This person, very jaggedy. And this person straight to the top. But Everybody finds unity in that mystical experiences, but let's not deny the differences of the journeys. Let's not deny the differences of the beginning places. All four of these mystics began in different religious traditions with different experiences, different ways of conceiving the world. All four of these mystics had different approaches to the mystical experience, and we need to recognize those differences. All four of these mystics interpreted their mystical experience through lenses that were shaped by different experience, but the experience itself is the unity. And so theory 2 suggests that yes, the pure mystical experience is the same, but nearly everything else about the experience is different, and we need to honor those differences. So first one, total identity of mystical experiences. Second one, well, maybe the mystical experience itself is the same, but our ways of interpreting it, our path to that, those are quite different. That's theory 1 and theory 2.